Hey everybody, take two on doing this video. The first one that I did didn't quite get saved, so hopefully it'll work better this time. So you have in your possession a strip of five LEDs, often referred to as neopixels, and so I'm going to walk you through the basics of getting these things working. Um, in You've got a strip that has three wires coming out of it. Those wires are power, ground, and then you've also got this other one, which is data, right? And so the data goes into the center uh, pin on the strip in my sketch and on my board. I've got it going into pin three, or the in pin three up here, right? So the way that these things work is the LEDs are daisy chained serially. You've got data in on the center line, and then you'll see right next to it, it's got a data out with data in coming into the LED, the subsequent LED, and just keeps on going down like that. So these LEDs can be addressed. The one closest to the microcontroller, its address is 0. The next one is 1, and then 2, and 3, and 4. You could have hundreds of these lights chained together in series like this. Uh, we're just working with 5 because it's a nice, easy number to plop into an envelope for you all. So the That's kind of it for wiring. It's really simple and straightforward. Uh, so just power ground data. A lot of times you'll see in kind of the proper, and I'm doing air quotes here, proper way of doing this is to put a fat capacitor across power and ground. That's really useful for when you've got a large number of these lights where they might be pulling a lot of electricity, a lot of juice. A strip of 5, you should be fine without one. So don't worry about that. So I'm going to move this over here, and I'm going to pull up the code here and just um, so before you get going with the LEDs and writing code, you're going to need to download the NeoPixel library. So as we saw previously when we were working with libraries, you go under your sketch, include library, and then this is something that's not included with the Arduino IDE. So we're going to click on Manage Libraries and open up the library manager. And we'll give it a second while it updates a list of everything that's installed. Probably for all of you, it'll go a little bit quicker than that. So in here, what we're going to search for are NeoPixel. And it should update automatically. You don't need to press enter or anything. And you'll notice that there's a couple of things up here. This first one, the Arduino DMA NeoPixel library, do not install that. That's not the proper version for you. The one that you're looking for is just the plain old Adafruit NeoPixel. And so you can select the most recent version and click on install, and it'll take a minute, and it'll download everything that you need. And don't close this window while it's installing. Wait until the little blue bar here is completely done. Then you can click on, and it says installed here. Then you can click on close, and you'll be good to go. So in our sketch, and this sketch right here walks you through the basics of turning the lights on red, green, blue, and then talking to LEDs individually as well as erasing the color. So first thing you need to do is include the NeoPixel library. After that, what we've got are two variables. The first one is the pin that the LEDs are connected to. The second one are the total number of LEDs on your strip. This is so that it knows how many to send it down to. To call the constructor here, we refer to the library. Right? This calls the constructor. And then here I'm creating an instance of the NeoPixel library called LEDs. You'll also find this referred to a lot of times in examples as strip or pixels. Um, just make sure that you're consistent in your naming, and if you're copying pasting code from examples, just double check whatever it's called. So here I'm calling it LEDs, and then inside of the constructor it takes 3 arguments. First are the number of LEDs, second is the pin that the LEDs are connected to, and finally there's this one where it says Neo GRB and Neo kilohertz 800. These are specifications for the kind of lights that you're using. This is right here, this first part is really the important part for all of you. It's really referring to the fact that the lights that you're talking to are RGB. There are other kinds of neopixels. So for example, this little circle that I've got right here, it's 12 of these lights, um, except instead of RGB, they're RGBW. So there's a white element inside of there too. So you can do some really interesting color mixing with that. Um, yes, I know that I'm saying RGB even though this says GRB. Don't worry about that. This is the correct thing. So here I've got a couple of variables to hold values of colors. These LEDs have a method for defining color names, and so we're going to use that. Inside of the setup, we are going to first begin communication with the LEDs. We do that through the begin method. So I'm saying LEDs.begin. That basically just turns on communication to the lights. After that, I'm calling this other thing called LEDs.show. And this show method is important. It's what actually sends the data to the lights and tells them to do whatever they were last told to do. So if you just like sent a command to the lights and you didn't call show, nothing would happen. The lights remember whatever the last thing that they were told to do before show. So this is how you can address LEDs efficiently, where you're only speaking like maybe one of them, and then the rest of them will still retain the previous color. We'll take a look at that in the example in just a moment. So here, this method colors allows us to give names to colors in RGB format. So here I've got my red variable and I'm saying LED's color, red value 255, green is 0, blue is 0. And so this is an 8-bit color value, similar like what you would find in Photoshop or in hexadecimal for a website or something like that. It's also how you can do color mixing. So if you remember from like the tricolor LEDs that we looked at early in their semester, this is a very similar thing. So here I'm defining red, here's green, it's 0, 255, 0, and blue, 0, 0, 255. So now I can refer to these colors later on when I just want to turn something on, red, green, or blue. Now you could do this with any color. You could have like aquamarine, and you could do like a lot of blue and a lot of green and a very little bit of red. However you want to do it, it's entirely your choice. So here inside of the loop, this is where all the action happens. Right here, first thing that I'm doing is I'm turning all the LEDs red. So I'm saying LEDs.fill, and then I'm saying red. So it refers back to this where I'm setting the color. And so this writes, when you say fill, it writes to all the LEDs in the strip. So here you can see I say fill, and then I say show, and this actually turns them on to that red color. And then I've got a 1-second delay. Then I do the same thing with green. Then I do the same thing with blue. So red, green, blue. So that's pretty nifty. After this, I'm calling LEDs.clear, and this blanks them all out. So this basically turns them all off. After you call clear, you need to call show again. You'll see that happen after it goes blue, clear for half of a second, and then it moves on to this next part. This final thing here, we turn the individual LEDs on one at a time. And we're using this funky sort of like purplish color. So here I'm looping through the individual pixels with this for loop. So I start at 0 and I count up to the number of LEDs. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm saying LEDs set pixel color, and set pixel color allows us to address individual lights on the strip. This first one is the first argument that it receives is which pixel we're going to speak to. So in this case, we say I, and then we can loop through them all. And then it's red, green, blue values. So here I've got a fair amount of red, a little bit of green, and a lot of blue. And that's what gives us this purple. And then afterwards, each time I call LEDs.show. And you'll notice the LEDs that I haven't spoken to, they remember what I told them to do last. So you'll see right here that even though I'm not actually addressing, LEDs 0, 1, 2, when I hit number 3, those other LEDs are still on. So it's just useful to remember that they will always remember what they were told to do last. So you need to be really explicit with them. And then finally down here, I've just got another LED clear and show, and it just wipes them all out before I start over again. So this is some basics on using these things. Next video, we will use a potentiometer to control the strip. And then later on, after that, the third video in this series, I will show you how to make a funky little sparkle effect with these lights.